G'day everyone. Well, it's EB Falcon assembly day. Having previously cleaned the block and the bores and all that, I've cleaned the block thoroughly and it's ready to receive the head gasket and then the cylinder head. Now what I used was P80 grit sandpaper. I used a belt actually. I had a belt that was too big for my sander, so I chopped the belt up. That's what I used to clean everything. Then I hit it with some P800 grit sandpaper, wet and dry, and to sand out any scratches or anything that was in the surface. So you do have to get it that clean. Don't be tempted to use electric sanders of any kind, because you may possibly damage the block. You might remove more material in one spot than another. Just sand it by hand. Get a scraper, scrape it first, then then just sand it so it looks like this. It's not, you might look at it and say, oh look, it's not clean. It is actually clean. It's just, it's smooth, it's got no crap on it. Touch is one of the most useful sensors when it comes to what condition the surface is in. So, give this towel a flick. Having previously cleaned everything up, give it one final wipe over. Just make sure there isn't any crap sitting on that, like dust or anything sitting there. We'll start assembling everything, and I'll make a heap of little short clips, and I'll just edit them all together so it appears as one video. It's not often I do it, but there you go. On an EB Falcon, or I'm going to say EA to AU because it's pretty much the same motor, go to your VRS set and locate this piece of rubber. It's a seal. It goes between the timing case top and the cylinder head, so the tensioner has actually been backed off, so that's why that plug's loose. So you got no tension being put on the timing chain. Everything's still in the position it was before it was pulled apart. Now you locate these notches in the gasket. Okay, they have a similar looking, but obviously this is like a male notch, and you got like the female one in this casting. And I've already applied a bead of sealant. Now don't put too much sealant, like you don't want heaps. This probably is a bit too much, but there you go. I'm going to find somewhere to wipe this. On that bull barrel do. So you don't want heaps and heaps of sealant. You just want smooth it out by hand so it's not just great big blobs of sealant, because you don't need great heaps of it, because all that's going to do is block up the it can make its way into the sump and block up the filter screen for the pickup on the pump, the oil pump that is, and just make a nuisance of itself. So I wouldn't go putting loads and loads of sealant on there. The gasket kind of snaps into the notches. It just sort of piss that timing chain out of the way slightly. So you'd snap it in there and get it to snap in there without coming off again, coming adrift. Wipe any elastic well away from the head gasket area, the deck of the block. Okay, so piss off all that. Now get your elastic out again. It's just silicon gaskets compound. Don't be tempted to skimp on the elastic and use all clear or some other rubbish. So again, we're just after a bead of sealant. So I'm not gonna paste it in sealant. I'm not gonna have loads and loads of sealant, but you do need the sealant, because otherwise it'll leak oil. It'll just weep oil, and So having done that, and again, you can smooth it out with your finger, whatever. You only just want a little bit of sealant. You don't want great heaps of blobs of sealant everywhere. like when I pulled it apart, there was, you know, absolutely tons and tons of sealant. You know, there was heaps of it all over the joint. Now when it's back together, you may feel free to wipe any excess sealant away, because like I said, you don't really need it all over the joint. If you get sealant, silicone or anything on something that you want to paint later on, unleaded petrol and then paint, or paint thinners or terps or whatever. Okay, so it's not going to be in focus, but what I've done is I've sprayed this gasket with Hylamar. This is what the can of Hylamar looks like. It's by ACL, and if you don't know who ACL is, and you're in Australia, I suggest you Google ACL, because they make bearings, pistons and whatnot, gaskets and shit. This is what it looks like. It comes in a spray can. You can get it in a, it tells you on the back that you can get it in somewhere. It tells you what else you can get it. You can get it in tubes, you can get it in some other format. There you go. Reference number HYL300. It is a tacky blue substance. That's what's all over my hand, if it'll focus. It's a tacky blue substance, and it never goes hard, and it will not glue your cylinder head down. It just assists with sealing of the mating surfaces. And I believe that it also can prevent corrosion between the cylinder head and the gasket by keeping the water out. So, identify the surface that sits on the engine block, which is, okay, I'm pretty sure it's that side. It's the side without the red extra sealant on it. So the gasket goes that way up. Normally they'll say this way up or whatever, but this one doesn't. So just sit the gasket on the dowels of the actual the locating dowels, that is. I've got bloody Hylamar all over my hands, which is pissing me off. And so the gasket's on. You want a close up of that. Stupid lens cap. Just sitting on the dowels. I've put a bit, there's a bit of, you know, like a run of Hylamar, but it's tacky. It never goes hard, and it'll just doesn't matter that it's come off that bit of sealant there, but there you go. Yeah, it'll flatten out. It's a very thin coating. Like, it's not, if you get it in the tube, you're only aiming for a thin coating. You're not aiming for heaps. The spray can's a very good way of putting it on for that reason, because you're not after a massive amount of, you know, Hylamar. It's like anything. You don't want to go whacking heaps of it on there. So get your flawless cylinder head that's been machined or whatever else. This bit's kind of a bit of a pain in the ass, because you've got to get it on the, got a stupid cable in the way that I never took off because I was lazy. So it's kind of a nuisance, this bit, but there you go. You don't want to set the cylinder head down on anything, because you're just going to bust it. You know, you're just going to stuff the mating surface. It's kind of a, don't want to sit the damn thing too much on anything. They are heavy, so get a foothold in the engine bay, whatever. Don't want to set the mating surface of the head down on anything. Now what's it hung up on? Nothing. There you go. That's it. Fully down? Probably not. Pretty much on anyway. There you go. That's it. That's the head on the actual block. So that's the first step. Well, having previously set the torque wrench to 40 Newton meters, grab your bit of paper out of the VRS set. I've already got this sitting the correct way around. This tells you what sequence to do all the bolts up in, so just in case you're out here with your laptop or something, this is the bit of paper. Or see workshop manual, but 40 Newton meters on your torque wrench. There you go. Which is not hugely tight. Not as tight as you'd think, but the stupid bolts are a bit loose now that I'm torquing everything down. Observe the tightening sequence because it ensures that everything's tensioned up correctly. So that's 3. As you tighten the head down, you'll notice some of the, that it's compressing your gasket. Three. It's just a fairly basic tightening sequence. Please use a single hex impact socket on the head bolts. Don't use multi-hex sockets. It's just better that way. Now I put grease on all the threads and under all the head bolts, so there you go. Yeah, as you tighten it down, everything flattens out. So 7, 8. It's not very exciting, but there you go. Seven, 8. 9, 10. Eleven, 12, there you go. Fairly quickly reaches the end of the line. $13, $14. It's not rocket science. If you get it wrong, it'll make you very sad. You end up with a piece of shit if you get it wrong. There you go. That's the first stage. This is the second stage. It's plus 90 degrees, which is actually a pain in the ass, but there you go. If you start out with the wrench, kind of, you can get angle torque wrenches that it's kind of a pet. So 90 degrees is going to be, make sure you're on number 1. Oh, straight light, it's going to be just about there. Yeah, so they're torque to yield bolts. They're so in reality you're tightening them up to, it's getting on to, I don't know, 60 odd Newton meters or whatever. But they're torque to yield bolts, so they won't be actually that tight, but that's just what you do. Angle torque bolts. They go pretty tight, but obviously it's what you're supposed to do. What is that I just tightened? Idiot. So 1, 2, and a 3, 4. So it's kind of actually, I've got to tell you, it's actually a nuisance because you can't really. So that's 3, 4. So it's going to be not quite. This is why it's a nuisance, because I should have grabbed an extension. Oh well. Stupid thing in the way. It's just a pain. Pain doing all this the way there. I don't know where my short extension is. Oh well. Bloody ass doing it this way. That's why you get. There you go. There we go. 90 degrees. Right. 5, 6. Slightly a pain in the ass, but five. 6. 7, 8, which is these ones. So it's going to be pretty sure that's it. Seven. 8. Right. 9, 10. It's pretty important you get it roughly, well, it's pretty important to get it 90 degrees extra. 11, 12. This is going to be a pain. Just a giant pain trying to get. That's about it. Oh shit, just go a little bit extra. That should be about right. 13, 14. So it's going to be just not quite. Yeah, there we go. 13. Pretty important to get that angle sort of spot on. There you go. That's how you torque down a Falcon cylinder head. It's a pain in the ass, but there you go. In case you're curious to what 40 Newton meters plus 90 degrees would be on a torque wrench, it's 94 Newton meters according to the wrench. That's when it went off. So it's not a torque setting. The second stage to tightening head bolts is an angle, not a actual setting. So don't go torquing it up to a actual torque setting. Just do it 90 degrees. So do all the head bolts 40 Newton meters or 30 foot-pounds, then plus 90 degrees. Well, I've done two things. One, I released the tensioner, pull out the tensioner plug, bolt, whatever you want to call it. You should use a new O-ring, but I'm going to put a bit of sealant on the thread anyway, just to be sure. I've released the tensioner, which you should have compressed. There's a special tool available, but what I did was I just pulled out the whole tensioner and manually put it in. And I've also tightened up the camshaft sprocket retaining bolt, which in the book it tells me 50 to 60 Newton meters. The torque wrench had 54 marked on the scale. I like to go halfway between torque settings, so that's why I've done it that way. It was lazy, and halfway is always better, you know, when it comes to torque settings. So just put a little bit of sealant on the thread of this tensioner plug. Don't put shitloads of sealant on it. It's just going to go everywhere, and you don't really need it anyway. Confirm the tension is definitely released. It definitely is released. I've confirmed it already off camera. So it's probably, yeah, it's a 14mm socket or ring spanner. Just tighten it up. What more can I say? You don't wring the crap out of it. But there you go. You don't need to wring the crap out of it. Just tighten the damn thing up. Don't wring the shit out of it. You don't need to. Conveniently, I haven't got my bloody side cutters out here, but I reckon having sort of cleaned these scissors on my trousers. Don't let these fall in the motor. Don't let the zip ties fall in the motor. No engine ever runs better when it's got zip ties in it. Oh, you son of a bitch. Okay. The zip tie fell in the motor. It's just going to end up in the sump. Oh well. If you drop one in there, it's not the end of the world. It's just going to sit in the sump for the rest of its bloody life. But, you know, don't drop them in there. It's starting to look like a motor again. I used a torque wrench to tighten down the rocker bolts. 24 to 34 Newton meters. I selected 27 because it was on the scale of the torque wrench and it was between the two torque values. There is a point doing it. No one's going to kill you or tell you off if you don't do it, but I reckon you should do it. I've lubricated the cam bearing journals and cam bearings that are in the bottom of the head. They're non-removable. I've lubricated the tops of all the valves too. You're supposed to check the clearance with a lifter collapse tool, you know, to make sure that you haven't got, but they're going to be right. Like this is one that's not, this is an inlet valve, this is number one inlet valve, and it's at the moment not being pushed by the camshaft. The lobe's nearly on the base circle, and we've got clearance, so as long as you've got a bit of clearance, it'll take that up hydraulically, but you don't want no clearance obviously, because, well, yeah, the valve's not going to close properly and you'll burn a valve out. So the rest of the procedure is reversal of the removal procedure, but this gives you a good idea of how to do a cylinder head gasket on an EB Falcon. EA to AU series ran this configuration, so this, you know, the manifold's different, but everything else is pretty much identical. The model numbers of the heads are not all the same. This head is a model 91 AA cylinder head, which is the Ford part number for it. EAE series 1 and 2 and whatever, they're not all the same heads, so be aware that the heads will bolt on. You can bolt a later head onto an early block, like an AU head should bolt onto an EA series 1 block, in theory. I've never tried it, but in theory it will. But do remember that the bits from the heads are not interchangeable, such as the camshaft and the rocker assemblies. You can't get an EA, you know, you can't get two different head part numbers and interchange the rocker assemblies. So it's like Commodore's VS to VR. You know, Ecotech versus regular. You know, people say, oh yeah, the Ecotech heads bolt onto a regular old VR backwards engine, but it won't. They're different. I've never tried it, but I know they're different because it says it in all the books. So, you know, I know everyone says, oh yeah, you don't really learn that much from books, but you do learn from books. And, you know, I mean, books are a better source of information than the internet because, you know, you never know who's publishing it. So if you want to know something about cars, I'm going to echo what Aussie50 said, or Ed as you guys all know him. If you want to learn about cars, go buy a workshop manual. Read the damn thing, cover to cover, and you'll learn things that no one else that hasn't bothered reading any books will know. So, you know, it tells you how the ECU works and how the fuel injection system works. That's how I learnt about cars. I started pulling them apart at a very young age, like, you know, 5 years old and whatever else, but I have learnt a majority of what I know by reading books, because you can only learn so much from pulling engines apart, and then you really have to learn correct procedures and stuff. Like, you know, all the work I've done today, I used to torque wrench on everything. Well, everything under the rocker cover. So the book tells you how tight to do stuff. You know, you can't just rely on what comes with the head gasket. You've got to know how tight to do the rocker assembly bolts, because do you want it coming loose? Alternatively, do you want to strip a thread? I wouldn't want to have to fix a thread in the head, so I'm just outlining a few tips and tricks. like you saw earlier on, don't drop anything in the motor. Like that little cable tie end that I dropped in there, it's not going to be catastrophic. It's not going to ruin anything, but it's just going to sit in the sump, and it's not really ideal. Really, you know, it's just one of the things you can't always avoid, but just ideally be careful. Like, you know, a better thing to do might have been to leave more of a tail so I could grab it easier, but there you go. Don't forget to use a torque wrench on the cam retaining bolt. Torque it up, don't just a guess, because you're going to be driving down the road and that thing's going to come off. Alright, thanks for watching.